Exit Stories Book Review, VingeGPT.com. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel.
Hello, welcome back investors, welcome to a new video. So today we will not be speaking about one specific company, but we're going to be speaking actually about 5 different companies. And in which context we'll be speaking about 5 companies, actually some of you have been asking, and thanks for having submitted your feedback, have asked as well that I would do some kind of book reviews or book recommendations. So this is actually the first, let's say, book related recommendation or video or book review that I will actually be doing. So I'm going to show you the book that we'll be speaking about. So today we're speaking about Exit Stories, which is a book about 12 unicorn founders, and those 12 unicorn founders are sharing their, let's say, learnings from the moment, how they created the company, how the idea came up to, let's say, at a certain point in time, how they even potentially exited from the company. So it's an interesting book. I bought it 2 weeks ago, so I've been reading it, and I mean, for the book lovers in the room, you're gonna hate me because I take a lot of annotations in my book. You can see it here. So I always make like a 1-page or 2-page summary that sticks actually in the book. So of course it helps me when I want to reread the book to have a quick summary of the book. So first things first, so as I mentioned, so the book is about 12 unicorn companies and their founders, and so from the 12 I must admit that there were 5 that I read the 12, but there were really 5 that I picked out that I really felt were very interesting to share the learnings and what was, let's say, interesting about those learnings and what was a little bit more, let's say, negative in terms of the book. So the companies that I really liked to read the exit story of the founders were Just Eat, that you may know probably because you order food at home, probably 23andMe, which is a genetic sequencing services related company, Booking.com, I am expecting that everybody knows Booking.com, Unity, which is well known today in the gaming development environment, and Fiverr, which is a freelance platform. I think actually it's one of the largest, if not the largest, freelancer platform or marketplace in the world today. So let me start first with what I like a little bit less, or what I felt was missing in the book, and I'm going to show this as well on the screen. So the first thing is, if I look at those 5 companies, so Just Eat, 23andMe, Booking, Unity, and Fiverr, and at no moment in time they speak about the performance after IPO. So I want to show you here, actually see it on the left hand side with the graphs. You see actually the performance of Just Eat takeaway since IPO. So they IPO'd, was it rough cut to the end of 2016, and you see actually what happened to their share price. So the share price actually has kind of been divided by 2. It went up a lot, so it has been multiplied by 4, 5, and then it came down actually, and versus the initial IPO price is kind of divided by 2. You have this for 23andMe. I will come back to 23andMe in a second. I'm just going to show you the graph here, and I will comment actually how to read the graph of 23andMe as well, and it's actually something that I feel is missing in the book. But you see that the 23andMe, I even think that 2 weeks ago they received a warning of potentially being delisted on the Nasdaq because they would go below the 50 million market capitalization, which is mandatory to be listed on the Nasdaq. So you see that the share price has been divided by 20 rough cut, even though it went up a lot. So it went up like multiplied by 2, but it came down to earth pretty rapidly, in fact. Booking, well, Booking is a older IPO'd company. So they IPO'd, when was this? It was like in the year 99, more or less 2000. So typical IPO pattern, it went up, everybody was very excited, so kind of initial IPO price was around $400 to $500, came down to earth to like 50, and then it went up like crazy. Here you see, in fact, the effects of the COVID, because nobody could and would actually travel. So of course at the moment in time the market, Mr. Market, was very depressed about Booking, and then I think this is probably related to the Russia Ukraine crisis, where also there was a shock on the market, and now you see that actually Booking.com in terms of share price is on its highest value. Here you have the company Unity Software, which has IPO'd It's now a couple of years ago as well. So yeah, let me just remove the advertising here. September 2020, apparently around $70 a share, and now the share price has kind of been divided by 4. And Fiverr, which is this for me the leading freelance platform in the world, so they IPO'd also a couple of years ago. And obviously during the COVID, there was a lot of excitement around Fiverr because, I mean, a lot of people, either they lost their job and they started to become freelancers on the platform. So obviously there were a lot of transactions, or people buying services remotely as well. But now actually the share price came back very close to the IPO price, actually a little bit below. Okay, so that's just to show you the first thing that I was missing actually in the book is really related to, let's say, the post-IPO performance. The second, let's say, weak thing that I missed in the book, and that's a very specific thing related to 23andMe, so this genetic sequencing services company, which was actually targeting B2C, if I understood that correctly. What they did not mention at any moment in time is that from the very beginning the company had design issue on how revenue streams were designed. And what was the flaw that they had from the very beginning? There was no, so the services or the revenue streams were not recurrent. So the only way to grow the company would have been to acquire more and more users. But when and this happened actually to 23andMe, which explains kind of the share price and the valuation that you see here. When you sell, you give away a 23andMe gift or voucher to a friend, to your mother, to your sister, I do not know, or to your husband, and for example, I mean, the person is very excited, wants to understand, let's say, the genetic background it has, but when you did it once, I mean, your genetic background does not change, so why would you buy a second, third, or fourth time DNA sequence? So what would be your DNA footprint, in fact? So, and this is a problem that from the very beginning, the only way for revenues to grow would be actually to add more and more users. But when a user has bought it, the probability of that user coming back and buying again the 23andMe service or any type of genetic service, because I mean, I did it myself with my wife. We had a little bit of fun of trying to figure out where were our roots in Europe, with some funny or surprising results sometimes. But you do it once, and I never went back in order to be able to have new type of information, because information is there and it's kind of constant. So that was, I would say, those are the two things that I was kind of missing in the book. So again, we are speaking about the book Exit Stories here that I've been reading and that I bought like 2-3 weeks maximum ago. So that's the first thing. And what you can of course do as well is you see here on the right hand side, I've opened a Vinci window and I've prompted the model using the latest date of data, can you perform a level 1 analysis? And I took the example of Fiverr. So actually you can ask the Vinge as well to have an analysis on Fiverr in terms of, this is just a fundamental screen, and you see actually that it is doing, as I'm showing also in other videos, it's doing an assessment of the company. So you see that the company, I mean, is from an earnings perspective is pretty expensive, from a cash flow less expensive, but you see that the profitability for the time being is not extremely high. The debt to equity is very okay, cash to debt seems okay as well. And well, I feel that Fiverr is pretty solid. I don't see the Fiverr model going away, but for me as a value investor, would not be necessarily the company I would immediately invest into. On top of that, there are no passive incomes for me. I mean, dividend yield is 0. So except if they would do share buybacks, which I don't see directly here in Vinge because that has not been programmed yet. So the share buybacks, but in terms of cash dividends, there is nothing. Okay, so that's just to show you how to do this in Vinge. So let me now go, before wrapping up this video, on what are the main messages and things that I liked actually about the book. So we're speaking again about the book Exit Stories. So, and let me just read here in my notes a couple of things that I like about the book. That also, I mean, that resonate also to me, being an entrepreneur as well, and also having run a couple of companies. So the first thing that and this is something when I was mentoring startups, is something that I also have been discussing with those founders, is basically the first mover advantage. So some people say it's not always good to be the first mover, because sometimes, I mean, if you are the ones creating the market, maybe somebody else will take over afterwards. So, I mean, being the first mover creates actually more friction, but sometimes it's good to have the first mover advantage. And I believe in that as well, even though you may be struggling. Where you have to pay attention when you are the first mover, and if there is a demand, is that actually you're not run over by a competitor who has much more capital to put on the table, even though the competitor has started a couple of months maybe later than you. And one of the founders, I remember, was mentioning here that he actually felt that he made a mistake in one of the companies he started, because he didn't want to open his capital and bring in fresh money, new investors, to go faster. And they were actually run over by a competitor who had what I call a higher capital intensity. So they could very rapidly reproduce the assets of the incumbent or the first mover, actually. So that's one thing. So, and that's something, as I said, that I've been discussing with a couple of founders that I've been mentoring over the last, let's say, 12 years, where I told them, yeah, I mean, you have a great product, but you have to go out, you have to sell that product if the MVP is okay. And because otherwise, I mean, how much time would it take for a competitor that would hear or come up with the same idea? How much time would it take if they have much more capital than you just to reproduce the same asset? If it is in terms of, let's say, the MVP, in terms of marketing reach and those type of things. The second thing that I can mention that I liked in the book as well is that many of those founders mentioned that the HR factor is key, specifically in startups. So it's very important to hire the right people and to invest also in the people. So that's very, very important. I fully agree with that. A third thing that was also mentioned is really when you are a founder of a startup, being selective about the type of investors that you want to have. So you need to decide which type of investors you want and respectively that you don't want, because not every investor is a good investor. So you have to be selective about that, and I fully agree with that. Also, something that I have always been mentioning also to my people when I was running companies is that it's not me, the CEO, paying your salary, your wages. It's actually the customer. So you have to listen to feedback. You need to accept, even though sometimes the feedback may be tough, but you need to accept the feedback from other people. So really pay attention to customer feedback and be open. Be open as a founder to listen also to feedback that you receive. Also very important, specifically today in an era where we have like unlimited storage capacity, unlimited compute power, we have AI, is really think from the very beginning on collecting data. This is something that I was mentioning to the founders as well, is like collect, when you develop a software or software as a service offering, collect telemetry data from the very, very beginning. And based on the data, take decisions based on the data, take decisions based on facts, on analytics. So that's something that they mention as well. That's why I'm mentioning, because I fully agree with that as well. Also, they were mentioning experiences they had with various venture capitalists. So, I mean, what came up very often is that the first meetings with the venture capitalists were always very tough. They were not well prepared for it. But they are mentioning in the book as well that investors tend to invest into people, first of all, not just into business plan or product. So the attitude of the founders and how they behave, even being polite with venture capitalists, plays actually a very important role for investors to decide, so for VCs to invest or not into a company. Something as well that was mentioned, and something that also resonates with me, is that sometimes you get a proposal, and so some founders were mentioning they got a proposal to buy the company by an acquirer for 10 million, and they were convinced that it was too early. So here as well is like, as I said earlier, not every investor is a good investor here. Not every exit proposal is a good exit, in fact. So sometimes you have to be patient, and if you really believe in your idea that you can go further, maybe sometimes you should actually disregard or not accept the first exit proposal that you get. One thing that I really liked, and that will be like my closing comments, we're speaking about learning and building up knowledge, because when you're an entrepreneur, actually, of course, you learn a lot of stuff and stuff that you are not prepared for, and in various domains, if it is legal, finance, marketing, etc. And what's one of the founders, I remember it was the founder of Unity of Fiverr, was mentioning in the book, is that intuition is key, and it's something that I also try to apply. And what I liked, what the guy was saying about intuition, is that he said that intuition is actually the implicit application of knowledge. And I've learned from Warren Buffett to read every day pages and pages to build up, to train your brain and to, let's say, capitalize and acquire more and more knowledge into your brain, be able to connecting the dots faster and faster. And actually, I never had such a good definition of how intuition applies actually in the sphere of entrepreneurship or business management or leading companies. So I liked what the guy was saying, that intuition is key, and intuition, I'm just reading here the notes that I took, intuition is the implicit application actually of knowledge. So I mean, I never, as I said, I never had that definition, but I really liked, so that was one of the learnings of the book. So all in all, so I mean, I like the book. Would I recommend it? For sure, for the learnings. I mean, if you're an entrepreneur or if you want to understand it, so what were the learnings that those people, men and women, or women and men, have acquired during, I mean, from ideation to IPO phase or to exit of the company. But I must say, from the 12 unicorns, the one that that resonated more with me were, as I said, Just Eat, 23andMe, Booking, Unity, and Fiverr. There are other 7 ones, but those were really the 3 that I could also understand better their business model, because those are services that, maybe with the exception of Unity, but the other ones are services that I could easily relate to. So with that, thanks for your attention, and hopefully talk to you or be able to share with you a next interesting video. Thank you very much.
VingeGPT.com